Okay, I think we can start. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Christina, and I would like to welcome you all on today's webinar, which will cover the very current topic, deadlines of registration updates. Thank you very much for joining us today, and I hope you will enjoy it. Now let me introduce today's speaker. It's Andrea Schovanková who will guide you through the webinar and share her knowledge with you. Andrea is working as regulatory queen at REGARTIS, and she can help you mainly with tasks related to REACH and CLP regulations. As I already mentioned, I am Christina and I will facilitate today's webinar. So if you have any technical issues, just let me know in the chat window and we will try to solve the problem. During the webinar, you are welcome to ask any questions you might have in the questions and answers window. I hope you can see this window in the Zoom application or in the web browser. And we will try to answer most of the questions in the end of this webinar, but if there's no more time, you will get all the answers to all the questions you might have after the webinar, together with the recording, of course, of the whole webinar and also the presentation from this webinar. I think that from the technical side, that's it, and I wish you to enjoy the webinar. Now I would like to ask Andrea to share her presentation. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Christina, for your kind words, and good afternoon to you all. Welcome to our webinar for deadlines of registration updates. Well, as it was already said, my name is Andrea Schovanková, and I'll try my best to tell you more about this subject. So let's begin. And for the start,
Andrea, please stop for a minute. It's the screen just frozen, yours. So if you maybe can try to share it again.
okay.
Yes, now it's okay.
Okay, thank you. Well, for the start, I think it is necessary to at least mention the regulation number 1907/2006, so-called REACH regulation, which most of you probably know in detail already. Well, this regulation deals with registration, evaluation, authorization, and restriction of chemicals. And part of the registration requirements is also keeping the registration documentation always up to date. And this is stated in Article 22 of REACH Regulation as further duties of registrants, which says that following registration, a registrant shall be responsible on his own initiative for updating his registration without undue delay with relevant new information and submitting it to the agency. I highlighted the part on his own initiative for updating without undue delay, because this basically means that there is no one to tell you to update or when to do it. Nevertheless, it is still registrant's responsibility to do so. And that can bring out some questions, like why is it even necessary to update the data? That is simply because the registration dossier works as a main source of information for the competent authorities, and they use this information when prioritizing substances for any regulatory action or when there is a need to consider appropriate risk management measures for harmful substances. And this is the list of the information which should be tracked and kept up to date. These are some administrative changes like name of the registrant, then changes in substance composition, quantities, or any new information about the risks and more. And I will talk about it more in detail later. Well, another question regarding the Article 22 of REACH Regulation is how should we understand the term without undue delay? And that would be just as soon as possible or preferably immediately. And well, that would work in a perfect world, but in reality, uh, what should you as a registrant do if this is not an option? And that brings us to the new implementing regulation number 2020/1435 on duties placed on registrants to update their registrations under regulation REACH, and which was designed specifically to clarify the deadlines of registration updates. It was published last week on 12th of October, and its entry into force is planned on 11th of December 2020. And if you just asked yourself, why should you care about it? Here's the reason. If we just use the Article 22 of REACH regulation, we know that the update should be done without undue delay, and that doesn't give us any specific deadline. It also means that it is more complicated for competent authorities to control the registrants regarding this obligation. And when this new regulation states specific deadlines for updates, the registrants should be prepared better, and it is easier to control this for the agency or other competent authorities. And this is the list of the reasons for updates, and now I will shortly talk about each of them. So we will start with the easiest ones, like administrative changes, and it means change of registrant status if he is a manufacturer, importer or producer of articles, or in his identification, which means the registrant's name or address. The registration documentation needs to be updated within 3 months from the day of this change. When a change in substance composition occurs, the update dossier has to be submitted to ICA no later than 3 months from the day when the manufacture or import of the substance with new composition begins. And when it comes to change in tonnage band, the registrant needs to submit the update within 3 months from the date of increase or cessation of manufacture or import. When it comes to restart of the manufacture or import, the update needs to be done before this restart occurs. Lowering tonnage band is not mentioned in this regulation, as it is considered to be usually only temporary, so it should still be done without undue delay, and it doesn't have any specific deadline. Then, when there are new uses of the substance identified, the updated information needs to be submitted no later than 3 months from the day of receival of all needed information for the risk assessment. If new uses advised against appear, the information has to be updated no later than 3 months from the day when the information about the risks are available to the registrant. So here's a little difference between these two. New knowledge about risks to human health or environment needs to be included in the registration within 6 months from the day it could be assumed that the registrant was aware of this information. which leads to changes in chemical safety report or in safety data sheet. If there is any addition, modification, or deletion of harmonized classification, the registration dossier needs to be up to date on the day that the change is to apply. A little bit different is when the substance evaluation leads to change in classification, then the update has to be submitted no later than 6 months from the decision to change has been taken. Then when the need to change or amend the chemical safety report or guidance on safe use is identified, the registrant has 12 months to submit the update dossier. Then in case of identification need to perform new testing, the update containing a test proposal need to be submitted no later than in 6 months. This deadline is longer for test proposal created as a part of testing strategy for a group of substances, and that is 12 months. Then if there is some change in access granted to information in registration, it needs to be updated no later than in 3 months from the day of the change. When the previously described changes lead to the need to generate new data to fulfill the requirements listed in Annex 7 or 8 of REACH Regulation, the contract with laboratory should be signed within 3 months from the day of identification the need to test, and the update dossier has to be submitted no later than 3 months from the day of receival of all final reports needed for the update. If also the need to update or amend the chemical safety report or guidance on safe use arises, the deadline is 12 months from the day of receival of all needed final reports. Then in case of multiple changes leading to the need of update, the updated information should be submitted according to the latest deadline of the updates, and it is counted from the day of identification of the first reason to the update. And then as a member of joint submission, your update would be always dependent on the lead registrant's update, and that means that the deadline is counted from the day of acceptance of the lead dossier update, and for the less complicated changes, it is 3 months, and for changes that also involve the changes in chemical safety report or guidance on safe use, it is 9 months. In case of new amendments to Annexes of REACH Regulation, which change the information requirements to the registrant, the dossier needs to be updated according to the date of the entry into force of this amendment. And to summarize all of this information a bit more clearly, I've prepared this table where you can find all of the deadlines, and you will find also more detail about from which day it is counted, as I've already described, but you can use this table you can use it for better orientation in the deadlines when you receive this presentation from us afterwards. And now to the question on how to fulfill the obligation to update. Then we already know that each registrant is responsible for tracking and evaluating of all information relevant for the registered substance. So if the information leading to obligation to update appears, if you are a member of joint submission, you have to inform the lead registrant immediately. Then the registrant modifies the registration documentation and dossier. And for this, usually the tool Euclid 6 is used. And then the registrant submits the update dossier in proper term via REACH IT. And here is what can the experts in REGARTIS do for you. Well, basically, we can make it way easier for you and do it all, starting with consultation on the need to update the registration documentation, preparing the proposal of strategy on registration update approach, and then we can also do the update dossier preparation itself, and there is also an option to submit the update dossier via REACH IT for you. And it was really, really short, informative webinar, and it is really all of the most important information from the new regulation. And thank you for your attention. And now we could answer some of your questions.
So, Andrea, are you ready for questions?
Yes.
So, first question. Could you clarify the timing regarding upgrade that needs to be done within 3 months? If additional studies need to be done, how does it count?
If additional studies needs to be done, it is usually if you identify the need to perform those studies, the first thing you should do is to make some contract with a laboratory, and that should be done within 3 months from the day that you found out about the need to test. And afterwards, you should be able to update the dossier within 3 months from the day that you already received all of the final reports from the laboratory that you made the contract with. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, and there is also another question right now from Daria. Thank you. Should you submit the signed contract to ECHA within Euclid?
No, I don't think so. I think you should always have all the documentation prepared if there is some audit or control, and the contract should be just as a proof that you are fulfilling all the obligations, and the deadline for the update is the 3 months from the receival of the final reports.
Okay. Daria, thank you very much. So another question. For the testing, do we need to report the 5 standards for hand sanitizer efficacy, or which standards do we need to follow?
This is a question that I would rather consult with my other colleagues. So we will answer it in email afterwards, after this webinar. So thank you for the question, and we will discuss it.
Yes, also another question. Would only test report will do, or do we need the test protocol? I would like to mention that we will answer these questions when we send the sheet with all the answers for the questions, because we need to discuss these with our experts. So another questions. A change in classification with effects on SDS and CSR requires an update within 6 months. Changes in guidance on safe use and CSR 12 months. What counts for CSR update?
Yes, this depends on the reason that the CSR and or SDS or guidance on safe use had to be updated or amended. So if you take a look in the table afterwards when we send you the presentation, I hope that you will find the answer for this, because it should be there in more detail and it should be um, more clarified in the table. So I hope you will find your answer there, and I will also add this when I write the answers for all of these questions, and you will receive it afterwards in the email.
Okay, so there's another question. Does this mean for very update from lead, all joint submission members also needs to update their dossiers?
Usually it is like this. If the change in the lead dossier is relevant for all of the members, you usually get the message via Reach IT to keep you updated on the lead dossier update. And if you're not sure about what was updated in the lead dossier, you can simply uh, contact the lead registrant and ask if the change that he made is relevant for you, and you should do the update as well, because if it's only like administrative change, like change in the lead registrant's address or something like that, there shouldn't be any need for the member to update as well. But if it goes with changes in CSR, or when there are new information about hazards to human health, it would be relevant also for the member of joint submission, and in that case, the member would have to do the update as well.
Okay, thank you, Andrea, for all your answers. So if you have any other questions, now is the time to submit them to questions and answers box. We will wait a few more minutes if some new questions come. And if not, if you don't have any other questions, I would like to thank you very much for attending this webinar, and you will receive all the materials within 2 days. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
So it seems like there are no other questions. So thank you very much again, and see you soon on our next webinar. Bye, everyone.